In this movie, I'll show you how to create a new document inside Illustrator. Like most of the movies in this course, this one is cross-platform. So even though I'm showing you how things work on a PC, everything works exactly the same on a Mac. You start off much as you might imagine by going to the File menu and choosing the New command, or you have that standard keyboard shortcut, Control-N here on the PC or Command-N on the Mac. Now I'll go ahead and bring up the New Document dialog box. Your first option is to name the document. Now technically, you don't name the file until you save it. However, this gives you a chance to identify the document up front. I'm just going to paste in a name I created in advance because I'm a terrible typist. The next option allows you to select from a few predefined profiles, all of which will dial in settings inside this dialog box. So if you intend to create a document for commercial reproduction, then you'd select Print. If you're trying to dummy up a web page, then you'd select Web. If you want to create a document for a device, such as an iPad or iPhone, then you've got this Devices option, and so forth. I'm going to go ahead and switch to Device for a second so that you can see that we have a lot of different devices to select from. In the case of iPad, however, the information is a little out of date. If you're designing for an iPad 3, then you want a width of 1536 pixels and a height of 2048. Much higher resolution than the earlier iPads. But for now, I'm more interested in creating a print document. Notice this next option, number of artboards. Artboard is Illustrator's name for a page. So if I were to dial in 6 artboards, I'd be creating a 6-page document. Now there are a couple of reasons why Illustrator uses this nomenclature. First of all, an artboard doesn't have to be linked to any specific page size. You can print to a letter size page, but you can make the page any size you like. Also, each and every artboard can be a different size and orientation. You can use artboards to create multi-page documents, or you can use them to create variations on a design. These next icons allow you to change how the artboards are gridded when you're zoomed way out from them. So in other words, how they're arranged on the pasteboard. So most likely you're going to grid by row, at least here in the States, but you could just arrange things in a long row or even a long column. Here's the thing to remember, you can always change your mind later, so you don't have to get it exactly right now. Notice this next option allows you to change to right-to-left layout, which is more common in non-Western countries. The columns option determines how many rows and columns of artboards you'll have. If I leave this set to 3 as by default, then I'll arrange my 6 artboards into 3 vertical columns and 2 horizontal rows. Notice this next option, spacing. It's set to points by default. And if you check out your units over here, you'll see that you have points, picas, and inches. These are old school imperial measurements that have been used for centuries in the world of design. Now, here's how they work. There are 72 points in a single inch, which makes them great for measuring very small items, such as text, for example. Picas fall in between, so there's 6 picas inside of an inch and 12 points inside of a pica. We also have the metric units, millimeters and centimeters if you prefer. And if you're designing for the screen, then presumably you'd want to work in pixels. I'm going to simplify things a little bit by switching to inches. And then I'm going to dial in a width value of 6 and a height value of 8. And I'm also going to change the spacing value, which determines the amount of space between an artboard and its neighbor. I'll go ahead and change that to 0.5 inches. You have these orientation icons, so if I were to switch to landscape, that would also go ahead and swap my width and height values. However, I want my pages to be upright. Finally, you can adjust the bleed. And you use a bleed specifically when creating documents for commercial reproduction. In other words, you're going to take the document to a commercial printer, and you want the artwork to bleed all the way past the edges of the trim size of the pages. So what you're doing here is you're creating a little bit of wiggle room. Now, by default, all the bleed values are linked together. I'm going to go ahead and take my bleed up to 0.25 inches. That'll change all the values in kind, which gives me a lot of room. A 1/4 inch is a big bleed. And now I'll go ahead and click OK in order to make my new document. And you can see that the black outlines and the gray outlines as well indicate the boundaries of the artboards, which translates to the final trim size. And these red outlines indicate our wiggle room or bleed. And those are the basics of creating a new document here inside Illustrator.